Welcome back, everyone. Sheepdog Smokey here, and this is a surprise from CNN. Mueller's report looks bad for Obama. The partisan warfare over the Mueller report will rage, but one thing cannot be denied. Former President Barack Obama looks just plain bad. On his watch, the Russians meddled in our democracy. We are not a democracy, we are a representative republic, while his administration did nothing about it. The Mueller report flatly states that Russia began interfering in American democracy. We are not a democracy. In 2014. Over the next couple of years, the effort blossomed into a robust attempt to interfere in our 2016 presidential election. The Obama administration knew this was going on and yet did nothing. In 2016, Obama's national security advisor, Susan Rice, told her staff to stand down and even knock it off as they drew up plans to strike back against the Russians, according to an account from Michael Isikoff and David Korn in their book Russian Roulette, the inside story of Putin's war on America and the election of Donald Trump. Why did Obama go soft on Russia? My opinion is that it was because he was singularly focused on the nuclear deal with Iran. Obama wanted Putin in the deal, and to stand up to him on election interference would have, in Obama's estimation, upset that negotiation. This turned out to be a disastrous policy decision. Obama's supporters claim he did stand up to Russia by deploying sanctions after the election to punish them for their actions. But Obama, according to the Washington Post, approved a modest package with economic sanctions so narrowly targeted that even those who helped design them describe their impact as largely symbolic. In other words, a toothless response to a serious incursion. But don't just take my word for it that Obama failed. Congressman Adam Schiff, who disgraced himself in this process by claiming collusion when Mueller found that none exists, once said that the Obama administration should have done a lot more. The Washington Post reported that a senior Obama administration official said they sort of choked in failing to stop the Russian government's brazen activities. And Obama's ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, said the punishment did not fit the crime about the weak sanctions rolled out after the 2016 election. I'm going to stop here and just pontificate a bit. You don't stand up to a crime you know is happening by waiting for it to be over and then giving weak sanctions or a weak punishment. As president, if it is true that Barack Obama knew the country of Russia was trying to meddle in our 2016 election, and if he knew this and did absolutely nothing and Cooper go away, then he should have acted to stop it, not to say, well, what's done is done and we're just going to give a little bit of a sanction. A legitimate question Republicans are asking is whether the potential collusion narrative was invented to cover up the Obama administration's failures. 2 years have been spent fomenting the idea that Russia only interfered because it has had a willing, colluding partner, Trump. Now that Mueller has popped that balloon, we must ask why this collusion narrative was invented in the first place. Given Obama's record on Russia, one operating theory is that his people needed a smokescreen to obscure just how wrong they were. They've blamed Trump. They've even blamed Mitch McConnell in some twisted attempt to deflect blame to another branch of government. Joe Biden once claimed McConnell refused to sign a letter condemning the Russians during the 2016 election. But McConnell's office counters that the White House asked him to sign a letter urging state electors to accept federal help in securing local elections. And he did. You can read it here. I guess if I had failed to stop Russia from marching into Crimea, making a mess in Syria, and hacking our democracy — we're not a democracy — I'd be looking to blame someone else too. But the Mueller report makes it clear that the Russian interference failure was Obama's alone. He was the commander-in-chief when all of this happened. In 2010, he and Eric Holder, his attorney general, declined to prosecute Julian Assange, who then went on to help Russia hack the Democratic National Committee's emails in 2016. He arguably chose to prioritize his relationship with Putin vis-a-vis Iran over pushing back against Russian election interference that had been going on for at least 2 years. if you consider Russian election interference a crisis for our democracy, we're not a democracy, then you cannot read the Mueller report, adding it to the available public evidence, and conclude anything other than Barack Obama spectacularly failed America. Subsequent investigations of this matter should explore how and why Obama's White House failed, and whether they invented the collusion narrative to cover up those failures. This is a very simple thing in my mind. Barack Obama knew that something was going on. Now, exactly what he knew, how much detail was there, we don't know. Because as of today, neither he, nor Hillary Clinton, nor James Comey, nor anyone else involved has done anything other than continue the lie that Donald Trump colluded with Russia. Robert Mueller has now stated unequivocally that there was no collusion with Russia. So in the media, we hear that the evidence must have been destroyed, or there was collusion. There's ample evidence in plain sight, and they just keep it going. Of course, they're doing this because now we are hearing more and more reports that the FISA warrant may be declassified, the dirty dossier may be declassified. And you have people scattering like rats from a sinking ship because they know that if certain things are ever truly declassified, it will prove that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are actually guilty of certain things, whereas Donald Trump is not. It is the same song and dance that has been played for decades by the DNC. They have attempted to impeach every GOP president for almost 100 years. Now, personally, I can only speak to the 40 years, or 42 almost years I've been here, because for those where I was a small child, I've still gone back and studied. In 1980, Ronald Reagan successfully ran using his slogan of, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And promised basically to do everything Donald Trump is now doing, help create jobs, lower taxes, and so on. As soon as that election was over, however, we started hearing of Iran-Contra. Colonel Oliver North fell on his sword for President Reagan and was drummed out of the military. And for many years, he was silent until his books began to sell again. He was a commentator for Fox News. Now he is president of the National Rifle Association. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North is a good man. He knew that to allow President Reagan to bear the brunt of this would have destroyed a large amount of work that had already been done. And he also knew that in the most strict sense of the words, he is the one who actually carried out actions that they were blaming on others. So he fell on his sword. They didn't stop there, though. They kept trying to find a way to remove him. They were as antagonistic as possible to George Herbert Walker Bush. But as soon as 1992 rolled around and Bill Clinton was elected president, Congress was, by and large, just a happy-go-lucky place. But then in the year 2000, when George W. Bush won the election, we started hearing cries and moans about dangling chads and voter suppression, and the Electoral College needs to be abolished. Undoubtedly, these calls and cries and everything else would have gone on for the entire 8 years, but for a horrible thing that happened in September of 2001. The Democrats wisely knew that to continue screaming, "Impeach, impeach, impeach, give us power, give us power, give us power," when we were responding to the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor, would have been the final nail in their coffin. So they toned it down. They still worked against George W. Bush. They still said that there are no WMDs, even after we have found possible evidence that there were at one point, but they were moved. And then in 2008, Barack Obama was elected. And of course, the Democrats were all happy, happy, joy, joy again. We must respect the results of the election. We have to move on. We must be unified. Until 2016, when they rigged the DNC primary for Hillary. And then the media was a willing lapdog as they continued to just almost weep for joy that Hillary Clinton would be the 45th President of the United States, which, as we all know, did not happen. All but immediately, I'm honestly surprised there wasn't someone on election night, the second Hawaiian polls closed, screaming, collusion, 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 impeach him now. We know that Maxine Waters has been doing it for virtually the entire time since inauguration. I'm personally surprised we didn't have Democrats not only boycotting the inauguration, but also demanding it never take place and just leave Obama in and we'll hold a new election. But they are smart enough to know they can't go that far. We have just over 18, well, a little under 18 months until the election of 2020. Democrats are already ramping up every talking point they have that we need a woman president, we need a president of color, a woman of color. The time of white men is gone. Give up your guns, give this up. We need to be tolerant, we need to be diverse, but not if you're a white male, and not if you want to keep your Second Amendment rights. They, of course, scream and yell about Donald Trump declaring a state of emergency at the U.S. border, where enough fentanyl to kill the entire city of Atlanta or Chicago or Dallas comes in at certain points during the year, where we know young women and other young people and other Americans are trafficked in and out of the country by people putting them into the sex trade, where we know gang members and terrorists have come across this border, where we know people have been allowed to re-enter the country after deportation, only to then kill someone, like a certain Kate Steinle. Meanwhile, they bemoan President Trump calling gang members like MS-13, who brutally murder people anytime they want, animals, by saying he is defaming all Mexicans when he's not. And then they say that the migrants have a spark of divinity in them, while ignoring that their own cities are burning. 2020 is a pivotal year because, in my mind, if the Democrats manage to steal power back, we will see the entire union begin to crumble and break apart. And I don't want to see that. I've been alive for almost 42 years and I love my country. But I also know that at this point in time, the DNC is the party of socialism and the party of totalitarian control. I've already spoken about Eric Swalwell and his open statement that he will implement a mandatory buyback and that future sales of those rifles that he demands you surrender to the government for a pittance will no longer be sold. And if you don't, you will go to jail. And then, of course, when Twitter responds by saying, so you'll jail us for not complying. Well, NRA Twitter is going nuts. I will not. You will not be jailed. Even though you literally said, Mr. Swalwell, you will be jailed. This is the norm for all Democratic candidates. Speak out of both sides of their mouth, the back of their head, and their armpit by saying anything and everything they can to garner every vote they can, and by opposing all measures to actually secure the election. If any of them truly cared about voter suppression or foreign interference in our elections, they would not oppose the census question about citizenship being reinstated. They would not oppose paper ballots. They would not oppose voter ID. But all of them know that if they can continue garnering millions of votes in heavy blue states from illegal aliens, then they can keep crying about the Electoral College. They've already managed to convince at least 2 states to ignore the will of their own people and say, we will go with the national popular vote. Although I have already predicted that should Donald Trump do what we all say he will and win in a landslide in 2020, because so many more people are working and keeping more of their paychecks that they want to continue, you will hear those states say, we do not recognize his election, we will vote for the Democrat. And you will hear multiple states basically say, we are going to write our policy so that we can make it into vote for the Democrat when they lose the Electoral College, or vote for the Democrat when they lose the popular vote, or just vote for the Democrat. And their people's choice be damned. I personally want this to continue because we need to know who truly ignored an attempt to influence and interfere in our election 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Because, as Mueller said, there was no collusion. And apparently, Obama's administration knew about the interference long before the election. And if that's true, and if, as Adam Schiff says, Mueller did not charge the president because he's just leaving the evidence for when Trump is no longer in office, well, Barack Obama is no longer in office. Hillary Clinton has never been in this office. They can be indicted now, as can all of their co-conspirators. But I've talked about this long enough. Let me know what you think. Just remember, as always, keep the comments civil. We do not learn from an argument, we learn from debate. And as always, remember to like, comment, and share this video, as well as to subscribe and ring notifications so that you're the first to know of new content as it is posted. Until next time, everyone have a wonderful day.